Hey there guys and gals, this is restocker here coming at you with another video. I hope you guys are all having a great day. For my Dota viewers, you guys are probably wondering, hey, this isn't Dota. And you'd be right, this is Wizard of Legend and it's a fantastic game. I actually had early access to this game from a few weeks ago and I've just been playing this game like crazy. I think I have about 40 hours or so in the game at the moment. So essentially what I'm going to be doing in this video is showing you guys how to get through the Chaos Trials or the first run of it so that you can actually beat the game and get access to the upgraded cape as well as the unlock the hard difficulty. So I've essentially unlocked everything in this game. I have all the relics and all the Arcana. As you can see, I have the insignia. I've beaten this game on normal and hard difficulty. And what I have right now is the setup that I had when I essentially beat the game for the very first time on the normal difficulty. So what you want to do is, again, this is just one way to beat the game. You don't need this exact setup. Maybe you play the game and you'll have a different feel for it. But for you guys who want a very easy kind of lackadaisical playstyle where you don't have to focus too much on dodging, there's a lot of leeway in your playstyle. You'll definitely want to check this out. So the Arcanas that we use are Bolt Rail. We use Flare Rush as our dash. Your dash doesn't really matter. I just like Flare Rush, so dash is probably the Arcana that you can really kind of replace out of all these starting ones. Then we have Volt Pinball, which is actually going to be our signature spell as well, and then we have Cardice Prime. Excuse me. We finish it off with Vampire's Eyeglasses. And what Vampire's Eyeglasses does is every time you land a crit, you actually heal a little bit of health. And now the cape that we're wearing is actually Awe. And what Awe does is it gives us a critical, increase our critical strike chance and our critical strike damage. So essentially we rely on our cape to allow us to do a lot of critical damage. And then we have Vampire's Eyeglasses on top of that to give us the lifesteal. Now again, keep in mind that this is just one way to play and it's a very easy way to play. So for you guys who are just trying to beat the game and unlock some of the stuff that I was talking about earlier, this is a very easy setup. So our goal is to typically have Cardice Prime as well as Volt Pinball running, and we're just going to ram into our opponents like so, and you guys will see what I'm talking about. So if you also feel like the need to actually transfer some of your Chaos Gems into gold, you can talk to the lady at the left of the room here. So actually I'll just show you guys that very quickly in case you don't know where to find her. She'll be located right to the left of the portal. And you can pay, I believe, 20 Chaos Gems and convert that to 200 gold. But I won't be doing that. But again, you can just talk to this lady here. 200 gold for 20 of your Chaos. We'll say not today. And this dude here actually will also kind of give you a pretty decent chance at finding or doing a run against a particular boss first. So Burning Furnaces here, we would fight against that Flame Princess, whatever the hell her name is. And we'd fight her first. But we don't really care. We have her first anyway, it seems like. And yeah, let's get right into it here. So what I like to do is always clear out one side of the map first. So I'll be starting out with left. And here you'll see what I mean by the playstyle. Essentially, we'll have Cardice Prime running, and whenever we can, we'll be using Volt Pinball as well. And we'll just be ramming into our opponents. There's a lot of leeway in this playstyle. So again, just using our abilities whenever they're up, making sure we're dodging a little bit. And again, the thing is, this build has a lot of leeway in terms of room for error because of just how much life you get from just dealing your damage. You're getting crits thanks to your cape as well as the vampire glasses. So yeah, pretty decent leeway. You don't have to focus too much on dodging. There is some, you know, room for breathing error, I suppose you would say. And now, the other thing that I'd like to point out very quickly is that this build actually doesn't require you to have too many other Arcanas. So just Cardice Prime and Volt Pinball is enough to beat the entire run. So any Arcanas that you get are kind of just the icing on top of everything. Think of it that way. You typically want to focus a lot on spending your gold on relics as opposed to any of the other Arcana-based things. Again, that's just my opinion. The other cool thing about Volt Pinball is that it actually knocks opponents back, and it knocks them back a pretty decent amount, and there's going to be quite a few decent amount of times where you'll be knocking your opponents straight off the map if given the opportunity. So always look out for those opportunities here. You can see you can just push your opponents off the stage. So it's pretty neat stuff there. So here we have a few Arcanas. I'm not a fan of any of these, so I'm actually going to skip all of those. and we'll keep exploring. Again, just keep exploring one side of the map. Looks like we found the boss room here. We could do the boss right now, but we have a little bit of gold, and we've only explored the map for about 58%. You ideally want to explore as much as possible, especially in the early levels. So here we have the Pinata guy. I believe his name is Taffy. And typically if you only have 2 spells, it's extremely difficult to bring this guy down. But since we have Cardice Prime and the Pinball, it should be easy for us. So what I like to do is wait for him to get into a decent position where I can kind of ram him into a wall. And yeah, then just go to town. So pretty easy. That looks a lot easier than it actually is, and again, that's because we have Cardice Prime and Volt Pinball. If you don't have the ability to deal a lot of sustained damage, you might not be able to kill Taffy on the first few floors, in which case you're probably going to need a few more Arcanas. Again, it's just a testament to how strong the Cardice Prime and the Volt Pinball actually are. So again, we can just, what I like to do is whenever I see those magician dudes, whether they're just spawned in a room by themselves, or if it's like a bunch of magicians and there's a bunch of like these knight kind of guys, I always try to kill the magicians or the ranged creatures first, because they tend to be a bit more of a nuisance and a little bit more difficult to deal with. Again, you can see that when I'm using Bolt Rail will almost always stun lock the minor enemies. There are some enemies that are immune to being stunned or frozen and any kind of status effects like that. But when it comes to these smaller enemies, it's very easy to stun lock them with Bolt Rail. And at the same time, you don't move too much when you use Bolt Rail. That's another really nice thing about it. If you click right at your feet, you don't move at all. And if you click further away, you slide very little, like an extremely small amount, you can see. And there's some basic attacks, I guess basic arcanas, that actually push you further than that, and those are ones that I tend to dislike. Now, since we have Bolt Rail and we have Volt Pinball, I'll actually be picking up Battery of Tyrannus here, and that increases our lightning damage. Nothing else that we really need here from any of these items, and let's go ahead and fight the boss here. So again, what I like to do is kill all the ads before I take on the boss. It just makes things a lot easier, and whenever you see the boss flashing, try to dodge his attacks. But again, I'm just going to be showing you guys how much damage this build actually does. When your signature move fully charges, go ahead and just wipe at the boss. Again, very easy to play, and yeah, going on to the next floor with full life. So again, the cool thing about this build is you don't have to worry too much about being at full life. Like when you're going on to the next floor, I'd suggest being at about 75% of your life is a pretty good goal to be at, around somewhere around 350 HP, because every time you get to floor 1 of 2 or 2 of 2 or 3 of 2, what happens is you'll actually be able to break an HP crystal before you fight a boss. So you actually heal a pretty decent amount as well. And then on top of all that, you have your leech running. So this build is actually very durable and also does a pretty decent amount of damage, especially with the Awe cape. So this vampire girl here is someone, I believe you have to hand over one of your arcanas, and if you do, she'll give you an effect. The only effect that I've gotten from her is she'll heal you a little bit when you go on to the next floor. So when after you beat the boss and you use the portal, you'll heal a little bit more. But I'm not a fan of that. I'm not sure what else she gives. Everything that well, that's the only thing I've received from her, but I can't imagine there being anything too useful, especially if she's going to take away the setup that I have here. So if she was able to take this earth spell that I have right now, Shattering Strike, I wouldn't mind that, but I can't control which of my arcana she's going to take. I don't think she can take the basic one, so again, I'm not sure if she can. I just don't think she can. But yeah, I'm not too much of a fan of that, because I'd rather have my arcanas that I can actually control rather than having some random buff that she might give me. So again, you can see that I'm taking a decent amount of damage. Again, I'm not I'm not dodging everything. I'm not playing fantastically. The first time I actually ended up beating this game, man, I was dodging everything like crazy. And I had this setup running, and it was actually super easy. But you can see here, I'm actually getting hit by spells a pretty decent amount of times. I'm not dodging things perfectly, playing a little bit lackadaisical, but again, this is just going to be a testament to how strong this build actually is. So again, with some of the ranged projectiles, you can actually destroy them. Sometimes you'll get a relic that'll help you destroy it or something like that. but for the most part you won't be able to manually do it. Now what you can see is I wait until my signature bar is almost depleted, and then I pop my signature ability, and that's because I'm waiting to traverse the map as much as possible, and when I get into a position where I know I'm going to be fighting monsters, then I pop the super or fully charged signature ability of Volt Pinball, and then since it's a duration based spell, it's just going to spin around me. Now there are some things here, nothing that I really care about too much. Let's pick up the Puffy Parka, and it evades all critical attacks. Again, just makes us a little bit more durable there. So something that makes our lives a little bit easier. So let's just keep on moving here. We knock one of them down, try to go to the ranged guy, take care of him as well. And again, a lot of our abilities that we have actually help us push our opponents. And you can see even Bolt Rail actually pushes them at the end of its combo essentially. So let's explore the far right side, and then we'll get back to the left side afterwards. So use this ability, push our opponents, get to the ranged guys so they're not too much of a nuisance for us. And then we'll head on over to this side here, knock this guy out of the way. Sometimes you don't want to knock your opponents off the stage because then you're not able to lifesteal off them. Again, that's going to be your call whether you think that it's a little bit too difficult for you to deal with your opponents. I'm just going to try to knock my opponents off the stage as much as I can because I'm not too worried about, unless I get very low where I actually need to start lifestealing, like I get like below 200 HP, then I'll start worrying about it. But if you're around like 350 HP or higher, you should probably opt to just knock your opponents off the stage rather than worrying about the lifesteal so much. So again, sometimes you'll be lucky and run into chests like that. They'll give you Arcana sometimes, gems, a little bit of gold, and healing always are typically welcome throughout a run. So again, we'll be exploring up here a little bit, and it seems like we are end of the line, and we found pretty much everything. So there is a Searing Chain is something that we can pick up. It's a pretty cool spell. And yeah, I think I'll go ahead and pick it up. And you'll see here, it's like a flurry of attacks, but the thing with Searing Chain they have to keep in mind is that it actually moves you a pretty decent amount. So for example, imagine this was a pothole here, I'd actually end up falling into the pothole. So the way that I have to use this ability, I have to be very wary of my surroundings. So here, let's go ahead and pop some of our spells. Again, I like to deal with the smaller minions first, so let's get them out of the way. I see him charging up for an attack, so I move out of the way here. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Pretty easy boss. This guy's probably one of the more easy bosses in the game. And as I say that, I'm taking a pretty a decent amount of hits. But again, I'm not too worried because we have a lot of lifesteal built in. So grab some Chaos Gems. It looks like we're actually capped out on Chaos Gems. Not really too much I can do about that. That's just kind of a testament to how much I've been playing the game. So remember earlier I told you guys anytime we're on floor like 1 of 2, 2 of 2, 3 of 2, it means we're about to fight a boss. You can break that red crystal in the middle. I actually didn't know that for the first few hours I played this game. So I was missing out on a lot of HP. So now we're fighting a Flame Empress Zeal. She's probably one of the more difficult bosses, so fighting her first means that we're going to have a pretty easy time of it. And after she does 3 attacks, since she's the first boss, she's going to start going into that little Goku stretch exercise. Anyone that's watched Dragon Ball knows what I'm talking about. That's Goku's pre-fight stretch that he always does. And during that pre-fight stretch is when you can actually get in a pretty decent combo onto the bosses. Otherwise, they're like, see how I'm hitting her now? She's not stun locked or anything. And she's going to be able to do her attacks as well. So what I want to do is make sure that I get into a decent position here, and I'm able to run into her as soon as her Goku stretching pose thingy kicks in. And then I want to get out of the way so that I'm not taking the brunt of her attacks here. The other cool thing about Cardice Prime and Volt Pinball is that all you have to do is get close to an enemy, and you don't have to worry too much about dodging and targeting at the same time, because your damage is just kind of centered around your character. So you just have to make sure you're dodging and that you get into a decent position. So here we have a skill that we can pick up. There's Ward of Lightning. I can swap that in and use that as a shock spell. I think I'll use that over the Earth ability that I had before. So yeah, the first boss you fight will do 3 attacks and then go into a phase where they're vulnerable. The second boss that you fight will do 4 attacks, and then the third boss will do 5 attacks and then go into their vulnerable phase. So it's very important that you keep that in mind when you're fighting the bosses. So here you can see that I actually opt to use my abilities before I turn the corner, and the reason I do that is because I want to make sure that as I turn the corner, I'm actually able to immediately rush into my opponents. So you'll notice that I use my ability somewhere around here, then I ran into my opponents, and I started the fray, rather than engaging them and then using my abilities, in which case sometimes when you use your abilities and your opponents actually hit you, your ability will go on cooldown, but you won't actually proc the ability itself. So it'll go on cooldown, but your animation kind of gets canceled and you just waste the spell altogether. So it's very important that you keep that in mind as well, and that you take intelligent engagements when you notice that there are opponents around the area. So here we have a bunch of dudes coming, and rather than fighting them all at the same time, we're going to go on and fight the mage in the top left. And again, we have a pretty nice situation here where we gathered up all the opponents all together, and now it looks like we got a new relic. So let's check out what it is. After evading an attack, all of your attacks are critical hits for a short duration. And now since we have Puffy Parka, it means that we can evade a critical attack and we can potentially start proccing off that. So there are a few items here. I actually don't remember what the heck they all do. I do remember that the flat gauntlet, was it the flat gauntlet? There's some kind of glove that lets you destroy projectiles made by your opponent. I'm not sure if it was the flat gauntlet or whatever the heck it is, but let's purchase it and see what the heck it does. So yeah, this allows you to destroy enemy projectiles with melee-based arcanas. So I'm not exactly sure what constitutes as melee. Like for example, Bolt Rail doesn't seem like it's a melee-based arcana, but I believe that the wind one that I have is. So we'll see how useful that actually ends up being for our run here. And again, we don't have to rely too much on our arcanas. We have a lot of we can rely on, we don't have to rely too much on any of our relics and arcanas altogether. We just have to make sure that we have Cardice Prime and Volt Pinball. So I could get Volatile Gemstone. It makes it so that your ulti charges faster, I believe, but it does less damage. I don't really want any of those cursed items. The only cursed items that I really like are the armor, I believe it's called like Armor of Envy and Armor of Greed. There's two of them. One of them increases the cost of purchasing arcanas, relics, and all that stuff for merchants, but it gives you more armor. The other one gives you more armor, but you take, whenever you take damage, you actually lose gold. So both of them have the thing with those cursed items is that they all have a pretty cool effect, but also a relatively jarring drawback. But in my case, I typically don't mind, again, since we have Cardice Prime and Volt Pinball, we don't have to worry too much about purchasing items because of how innately powerful both of these spells are. So again, just clearing out the area. Going to make sure that I deal with one side first, deal with the mages here. These archer guys are pretty annoying because they're able to target you from so far away, and they can shoot these arrows in the sky that end up falling down. You may have saw a small red circle there that I dodged, and if it hits you, it has a potential to freeze you, and freeze is a very annoying ability in this game where it's going to be very difficult for you to move around the map. And again, if you get frozen, you're probably going to get hit by more freezes, and it becomes a pretty unfortunate chain to be caught in. So there's 2% that we can explore. Potentially there could be more items, but again, I feel like we have a pretty decent setup here. So I'm going to be focusing on killing the extra ads, as I always do. And the cool thing about Volt Pinball and your super in general is that if you're able to build up your super meter, so again, just tanking spells for no reason, the spell will actually come off cooldown if you're able to fully charge your super meter. So that's another important thing to keep in mind. So again, I've done this fight relatively poorly here, but it shouldn't mean all too much because we are just about going to kill the boss. And again, we get a little bit of extra life from the chest. And then when we fight the monsters on the next floor, assuming we're dodging a decent amount, we'll heal naturally through the vampire glasses. Another thing that you might want to keep in check is understanding which elements are good against which elements. Essentially, water is good against fire, fire is good against earth, we have lightning that's good against water, and there's some other pretty small nuances that you want to be learning as you play the game, and some of that stuff will be more apparent as you guys play through the game and experience a few more runs. So yeah, just keep that in mind. Very small stuff to make sure that you're paying attention to. Another thing is, don't worry too much about using your signature move, because if you don't use it, the bar depletes relatively quickly. So use your signature ability relatively liberally, I'd say. If you see it up, you probably want to pop it. There really isn't too much reason of holding it other than maybe trying to like eke it out as much as you can so that you're saving up your super meter, and as you're about to enter a new room, you pop it out. for maximum efficiency or something like that. Now again, so you can see that when I get frozen, I get comboed and it becomes very difficult to deal with the frozen status ailment because again, your enemies start chaining hits against you and things go south very quickly. Again, I'm not a massive fan of any of these Arcanas, so I'm just going to go ahead and yeah, we're going to leave that for where it is. So we have 200 gold, and if we see anything at the merchant that we like, we can definitely pick that up. So yeah, just moving on our way, making sure that we explore all of one side. Now with ranged enemies, when there's a bunch of them, you want to make sure that you're constantly weaving in and out of the fight. You can use some of your surroundings to help you. For example, if there's an archer right here and he's trying to aim the arrow at you, you can hide behind a statue like this. Again, waiting until my super bar is about to be depleted and popping out my signature move, just in case that there's any enemies around the corner. And you can see here, an enemy did end up showing. Now we evaded one of those attacks, so we'll be doing a little bit more damage for the upcoming engagement here. And again, you can see just how easy this how easy it is to play this. Really, you don't have to worry too much about dodging. You lifesteal a lot of HP, so even if you're taking hits here and there, there's a lot of breathing room. And on top of that, if you have the Awe Cape, it means that you're going to be doing critical damage as well as a higher chance to crit. So we'll be lifestealing a lot. You'll be doing a decent amount of damage. So you have the best of both worlds in terms of offense and defense. Now you notice that my Shearing Chain is actually on cooldown right now. And that's because as I was doing it, I got hit. So the spell actually went on cooldown. So you have to be very wary of stuff like that. So here we have a few things that we can potentially pick up. The scanner will make it so that we actually see the health bars of all enemies. Just a quality of life thing. I'm not too interested in any of those other relics, so we'll just go on up ahead and continue exploring the map here. So we'll be throwing down the shock ward here just so that we can deal with the slimes on the left and we don't have to deal with this dude here. We have Alchemist Stone. Since I have max Chaos gems, I might as well just pick this up because what it does is it converts all Chaos gems, trading the trials into gold. So if you ever get maxed out on Chaos gems, you know, you always want to essentially pick that relic up. And a very important thing to note about Chaos relics, Cursed relics, is that you can't actually drop them. So for example, I can drop the battery here, but even if I press F here to drop the relic, the Chaos one won't be dropped. So it's an important thing to keep in mind if you ever get relic capped, although there is an achievement for getting 4 Chaos relics, Cursed relics and holding on to them. So we'll be moving on to the next boss here, popping all of our spells, making sure that we get out of the way there. We evaded a few of those attacks, but we took a pretty decent amount of damage from that move, so let's not try to get hit by that again. And as I say that, we kind of get slaughtered. Again, you can just see how much damage this whole combo does. So I think what we want to do is actually head back and purchase up the healing potion there. But before that, let's see what we get here. We actually got a relics reward card, so it makes all the relics here cheaper. So let's just heal up. And something I want to kind of reiterate is that you just want to make sure that you're very healthy when you're playing this character, because you do a lot of damage. As long as you can just get to the next floor, you'll be fine. You don't want to worry too much about the relics and spending a lot on Arcanas. Make sure you're healthy. That's probably the most important thing. So we got Frost Queen Freya here, and she can also be a very difficult boss to fight in certain situations. She has a lot of fast spells. She has a potential to freeze you, and if she does, she can potentially combo and do a lot of damage. Now the cool thing though is that since we have a lot of lightning damage, you can see that the text actually appears as an orangish color, and what that means is we're doing a lot of damage. If the text appears as a bluish color, it means that you're doing less damage. Now for that ability, it's typically very hard to dodge. What you need to do is make sure that you're in a position to get behind Freya, and sometimes you don't have the leeway to always do that. And since we got her HP very low, I kind of just stood there and ensured that I would be able to finish her off and kind of just brute force through her. So here we have Perfect Storm. You can check this ability out if you guys like. Shoots down a fray of ice. It's a pretty decent ability, but against bosses, it's not particularly useful. So we're going to stick with the lightning ward because at least we get some pretty decent, I guess you could say like zone control or area control. Again, up to your preference. The two most important things are definitely the Cardice Prime and the Volt Pinball. A lot of the other stuff, you can kind of wing it and whatever you feel like using. again, this is just one of those, the point of this video is to just show you guys a very easy way to get through the Chaos Trials. So if you can get this setup running, you're going to have a very easy time of it. So now we're in the Earth Arena. Some of our attacks, our lightning-based attacks, actually do less damage, so we got to be pretty wary of that. We're going to throw down our 2 wards here and make sure that we are targeting the enemies one at a time. Now that dude kind of just jumped on me and had a pretty decent surprise attack, but you can see here I'm sitting at full health just because of how much damage I'm leeching here, or how much life I'm leeching off the damage that I'm doing. So activate Cardice Prime. Another useful thing to note is that whenever you use your abilities, they'll actually, whenever they come off cooldown, they'll appear above your character. So that's a pretty easy way to know when your spells are coming off cooldown. I have the habit of actually looking down at the bar because of like Dota. I play a lot of Dota, so it's a lot easier for me to check down there. Now sometimes you'll fight against enemies that are immune to crowd control abilities, or they don't get knocked back and stunned. So that big stone boulder dude, as well as the guys that jump around with the blocks on top of their head, they're immune to crowd control and they don't get CC'd like this. You see how the bolt rail is actually stunning the guard. Some monsters actually are immune to that kind of stuff. So it's very important that you take note of that and you don't play too aggressive when there's a lot of those types of monsters on the screen. So we've explored the far left side. Let's go down here and check out what's over here. So pretty similar to the room that we just dealt with up there. Again, we'll want to be taking care of one of the sides first. We've got our signature back up, and again, you have to keep in mind that when your signature comes off, when you fully charge up your signature, the ability will actually come off cooldown. So you have the potential to use the ability twice in a row. So make sure you're paying attention to that as well. So here, this is going to be a platforming puzzle. You want to make sure that you do this pretty carefully because there will be a lot of holes. I'll probably be falling a lot. I'm terrible at these. So yeah, you don't always want to go to the very edge because you might fall off. This one seems like you have to go one near the middle. Dash from here, probably dash from like about here. This one seems like dash from there. All right, so it was a pretty okay. I was gonna say it's a pretty decent run, and then I fell off the edge there. Still a pretty decent run. I'd say it was decent overall. We can check out what this relic is. I actually don't think I've ever used this one. So as you're moving, you kind of just dish out damage. So that kind of is a pretty decent in terms of the way that we kind of play our character. So that could be potentially useful, although I do actually like the mobility that I get from the chain. So we're going to stick with that. Now we'll be moving on to the right side of the map here. So pop some of our abilities, get our ward down. So you can see that whenever I'm doing the lightning based attacks, I get blue text, and then whenever I do the wind based one, I actually get orange text, and that's because wind does extra damage against earth types, whereas lightning does less damage. So let's go ahead and rush these guys. The little earth guys, the earth rogue type characters, are a little bit scarier than I would say the ice version and the fire version, because not only do they do a lot of damage, they knock you back relatively far with their attacks. So you have to always be careful of that. So let's drop down a lightning ward here. So now we have a bunch of golems. Again, we have to keep in mind that they are immune to knockbacks and stun effects. So we gotta try to kite around them as best as possible. And then we can use a searing chain here. Oh, it looks like there's a little dude stuck back there. I was like, huh, why aren't the doors opening? So let's continue to clear out the left area here so that we don't have to backtrack. So we have a bunch of options here. I actually don't remember what the heck all of these do. So let's pick up this and let's see what that does. All melee basic arcanas have a secondary hit that deals reduced damage. Again, I don't think I have any melee things. I'm not sure if Shearing Chain actually is a melee spell. But yeah, sometimes I don't remember what the heck arcanas do, even though I have all of them, and then I just buy them if I have a lot of gold. So this is where things can get a little bit dicey. So if things get a little too crazy, make sure that you're kind of back off, reset, collect yourself, and go in. Otherwise, you can end up getting comboed pretty heavily and lose a lot of HP. And you know, no one wants to lose a lot of HP. So here, let's go for the ranged guy first. Again, making sure that we're dodging some of the attacks here. Don't have to be too... don't have to dodge everything and be extra careful. We can play a little bit aggressive. We still have the potion that we can purchase up from the merchant. And I think I'll go ahead and actually do that right now. Let's check out what's here. So we have the guy who can fit us and make sure... I think he boosts your stats a little bit. So if you see this guy and you have you are running this setup, I would recommend going for this. The thing you have to keep in mind is that he actually damages you heavily when he outfits you. I believe he like increases all your stats, like your damage, your defense, and stuff like that. So we'll pick up the potion heal, about 200 HP there. And let's head on back to the boss. There are a few more rooms that we have yet to explore, I believe. I'm not too sure on that. There might be like one more room, but I'm not too worried about that. So let's go ahead and just move on to the boss fight here. So this boss is pretty easy. I'd say the arrow guy is probably the easiest of all of the like mini bosses here, because most of his attacks you can just dodge to one side and you'll be completely fine. And much like most bosses, as soon as you get your signature charge and you're able to use Volt Pinball, they'll probably end up going down relatively quickly. So we've got destroy all projectiles in the area when hit by a projectile. So this is definitely a pretty useful tool if you got just a full screen and you're on like bullet hell mode. As soon as you get hit by one, it erases all the other ones. So let's check where the last vendor is. It's probably up north here. And yeah, so it's a pretty good thing that we checked, because now we have an upgrade to our basic Arcana. That's pretty much all that we need. We'll be moving on to the next floor. And you guys can see that I'm not playing particularly well here. I'm at the same time, I'm kind of trying to show you guys the experience that a newer player would have when they're playing this build. You're not going to be dodging everything perfectly. Again, I think the first time I actually beat the game, I was like super focused, and I was making sure, like, I was playing so much better than I am right now, dodging a lot of attacks. And I think the game is a little bit more enjoyable when you play it that way. But this is just kind of a way to show you guys, kind of a cheap way if you really think about it, to beat the game. It makes it super easy. And it's pretty easy when you're trying to clear mobs, but when you're fighting bosses and things like that, you still have to be relatively careful. You can see here that I wait until I get into a room full of monsters to pop my signature Volt Pinball. We'll be throwing down our shock, which helps us clear some of the smaller adds with a bit more ease. And again, using our super liberally here, there's no reason to hold on to it. And we'll be clearing out the little slime guys here. Let's head on over and I'll explain what this guy does. So basically what this dude does is he swaps one of your Arcanas and he gives you another random one. And again, I'm not too keen on the merchants that take away... that take away my Arcanas. So yeah, we'll be steering clear of that guy. So I saw those dudes up there, but I didn't know who they were, like what type of monsters, and they did a pretty decent amount of damage to me. But as you guys can see, I've already healed up about 20 HP from all the damage that I've taken. So Cartographer's Quill actually increases the damage that you do based on all the map that you revealed so far for your run. And then we'll get the Pendulum, which reduces all of our cooldowns. So now we're full on Arcanas. We can drop anything that we don't want. For example, I don't think Flank Gauntlet actually is doing anything for us. So if the situation ever calls for it and we want to pick up a cool relic, we can always just drop that. The reason I'm actually carrying the relics around with me that I don't need right now is because there's a merchant where you can drop your relics and get gold. So since we're on the last floor, we're not worried too much about gold right now. But you know, there might be a situation where it calls for it. Rather hold onto it and not need it than to need it and not have it, you know. And here, nothing noteworthy, so we'll skip that. Let's go on and explore the right side. And I think the right side is probably... okay, I thought it was going to be a little bit shorter than this. Ends up being pretty long. What I like to do in the rooms like this is actually end up going to one corner and then approaching all the dudes at the same time like that. And always using this kind of X formation to kind of maneuver around a little bit more stealthily and kind of use my terrain to my advantage. So again, I'm going to be dropping a ward down here. We've got our signature charged up. And you can see just how much damage I healed. Earlier I was sitting at like 300 when I got beat down by all those guys, and I'm already at almost 400 HP just because of how much damage we're able to heal from all the lifesteal that we do. So I can probably save money on a potion here. Again, you have to keep in mind that when you move on to the next floor, since we're on you know, a -2 stage, so 1-2, 2-2, 3-2, you move on to a boss stage and there's a big red crystal that you can break to get a lot of HP regeneration, or health drops I should say, rather than regeneration. So we'll smack these guys around a little bit. Sometimes it's just fun to run around with these abilities just circling you rather than attacking the creatures. I don't know why. It's just fun. So let's head on up here and see what's up here. Looks like there's nothing. Some of these platforms you have to be careful how you approach it. Otherwise, if you're too close, you might fall off. Like for example, that one we were fine. But for some of them, you have to be careful about how you approach them when you're dashing. So it looks like there isn't too much else. So let's head on back to the boss. Since we don't really need our gold, we'll actually get the healing potion. And we probably won't take too much damage. So if we do get nicked a little bit, we can get the healing from the red crystal before we fight the last guardian boss guy, or whatever the hell they're called. So drop down our ward here. As always, go for the extra adds. So it looks like we got clipped by that pretty hard actually. So we'll have to be careful. And you can see I just used Volt Pinball, but I have the ability up again, and that's because I fully charged my signature. I can use the ability 2 times in a row. Get a little bit of heal from here. And we'll see if there's any relic here that's noteworthy. That increases our air damage. We do have an ability that does air, and then this also allows us, Bracers of the Beast is actually a shout out to Street Fighter 3 and Daigo, of course, the Beast Unleashed. And what this does is if you hold forward as you get hit, you actually guard the attack. So again, a shout out to Third Strike there. So yeah, let's go ahead and we can drop the gold relics card since we don't really ever need that. And we can purchase up we can only purchase one thing. So let's go ahead. Do I really care about the air damage? Is that really going to matter? I mean, we can get Bracers of the Beast. It's not really going to help us too much either, but there will be situations where we're just like running and we'll randomly block something because we're holding forward. So that's always nice to have. And again, can break these crystals just for a little bit of extra HP. What I like to do is break some of these trees at the start before I actually engage the boss, and just clears up a little bit of extra room for me to fight in early on. So we got our boy Atlas here. And again, since he is the, again, you can see there I actually ended up dodging an attack. Got to be pretty careful how you approach these bosses, because if you get nicked by one attack, you might end up getting nicked by a lot. Since Atlas is the third boss, we have to be weary that he's going to do a few more attacks than the other bosses before he does his little like dancing thing. And you have to be pretty quick about how you approach them, otherwise they don't give you that opportunity to hit them during their vulnerable phase. So how I like to dodge this attack is run all the way down or in one direction and then go to another angle and start dodging. So I'm actually missing a lot of the opportunities here to damage him during his dance phase. Or finally I got one opportunity off, and you can see just how much damage I do in that one phase. So the fight is kind of predicated on how focused you are. You have to be pretty careful. Again, you can see just how much I'm actually blocking thanks to the I forget what the relic is actually called, the Bracers of the Beast, and I'm guarding a lot of his attacks just by holding forward and walking into them. So it actually ended up being pretty helpful. We took a lot of damage. That was not a clean fight by any stretch of the imagination, but we're going into the last fight here with a decent amount of health. So again, since we're going to the next floor, we'll be getting a pretty decent heal here. Probably boost us a little bit over 400 HP, just at 400 HP. And once we beat this form of Master Sura, we'll get another health drop as well. So for this fight, what you want to do is the first form, don't get too antsy with auto attacking. You want to make sure that you position yourself in such a way that you're able to dodge his attacks. And again, you can see here, I'm always positioning myself, trying to stay away from his his beams and things like that. I would say that his final form is actually easier than most of the bosses that we fought so far. There, we broke some of his crystal. We're sitting at almost full HP after fighting his form. And in this form of Master Sura, what you want to do is focus heavily on dodging his attacks. If you ever get hit by an ice spell, start wiggling your controller or pressing left and right on your keyboard like crazy. And after he does his like super move, so this is a super move, he's going to dash to a location, and that's when we start going to town on him. And don't get too crazy on the attacks. He's able to break out of your of the stun damage, whatever the hell you really want to call it, relatively easily. So there I missed my opportunity to actually hit him while he was in his vulnerable phase. What I'll be doing is, there you can see how much damage he's doing actually. You have to be pretty careful about how you approach this fight. He can potentially dish out a lot of damage. I would say it's still a relatively easy fight. I'm just not particularly performing that great right now. So again, just keep dodging his moves. Wait until he does a super attack. Dodges the super attack and let him dash, and as soon as he dashes we go to town, do a lot of damage, pop our super once again, but don't get too giddy. You want to make sure that you focus on dodging. This fight is heavily, again, focus on dodging, having a lot of patience, and that's pretty much it for the fight. So we're just gonna bum rush him here at this point because he's extremely low, and we get him. So again, not a super clean fight, a fight that it's probably going to be very indicative of how you'll probably experience the fight the first few times you go through. As you get more acquainted with his fight, it becomes very easy. It's very easy to beat him with, like, I shouldn't say very easy, but it's very manageable to beat him without getting hit. So yeah, that's pretty much it. That's pretty much the run. You guys can see I played very sloppily. I was kind of absent-minded. I was thinking about what I was going to have for breakfast in the morning the next day. But yeah, it's a pretty fun build. You just focus heavily on Cardice Prime and Volt Pinball. You have some other abilities that come in that, again, you know, these aren't great. I wouldn't say they're great skills, but they're just quality of life stuff to help you get around the map. The bread and butter are making sure that you have the Awe Cloak, which gives you critical damage and critical chance, and then you go for the Cardice Prime as well as the Volt Pinball. And again, I like to have Bolt Rail as my auto attack. That really kind of is up to you guys. I just think Bolt Rail is a super sweet spell. And then we have Vampire Glasses for the lifesteal. So those are the main components. Everything else really is up to your preference, especially for this build. And again, this is just one way for you guys to kind of win the game. And actually, when you beat Master Sura, he gives you one of his, he gives you like a chaos or a shadow element spell. And I can show you guys that very quickly, and you'll get one of those abilities when you beat him. So yeah. So after you beat the game, it'll show you the cape that you used, the relic you started with, your 4 primary arcanas that you started the game with, the merchants that you ran into, and yeah, your secondary arcanas, all the relics that you have, and then you get teleported back. So that's pretty much it. And you go back to single player, everything saves automatically. And now we can go to Tomy and I'll show you guys some of the chaos stuff that he gives you. So he gives you a bunch of these abilities here, and he gives you a pretty sweet teleport. Well, he doesn't give you all of them. You got to beat him multiple times to actually get each one. And he never gives you more than one of the same. So you can be, you should be happy knowing that. So this is the dash that I'm particularly used to for the last 20-something, 25, 30 hours of the game. I've probably been using this dash. So using the, and this one lets you dash through projectiles. It actually basically gives you invulnerable. You can think of it as invulnerability frames. You're kind of teleporting around. So when you're using a normal dash that doesn't give you the invul frames, and you're kind of just skidding along the ground, you have to kind of keep in mind that you're you have to be very wary of how you're dodging stuff. So if a projectile is flying towards you, you'll actually get hit by it. So again, he gives you some pretty cool stuff. So again, once you also beat the game, you'll get a insignia that unlocks hard mode. So you can go to Misc here, miscellaneous, and the bottom right you'll have insignia of legend, and when you wear it, it actually unlocks the hard mode. So I'll probably upload a video of me playing through the hard mode at some point. You also get the upgraded version of your cape here. The first two that you start with, you get Hope and Patience, and they get upgraded into having a whole bunch of these cool stats. So Hope basically becomes a super steroided version of Awe, so definitely want to be running this stuff when you're trying out hard mode. So thanks for watching, guys. I hopefully found it useful. Kind of a cheesy build, I guess you could say, to beating the Chaos Trials, and hopefully you found it useful.